Our destination?
Couch critics.
Let's go for a ride.
Welcome to Girls Trip. Today we are not sitting on a couch, but imagine that we are, because we are definitely going to be critics today. And we are each going to share something that we have consumed recently, book, movie, podcast, and give you a little bit of a review to help you decide what you should read, listen to, watch next. So Rebecca, what do you have for us?
All right, we're going to start off with a podcast. So, funny story. I had never listened to a podcast before, I think, in my life until I met these two. Or not met these two, but we started talking and discussing it. So
Now it's become a lifestyle choice.
it really
It
is.
is. It really is. So be careful.
You might get sucked in. So they were discussing, I don't even know what it was, but some sort of true crime podcast. I got sucked in. I listened to this in a day. It was like 10 episodes or something, and it was just on. It was like the 4th of July. I was making food for a barbecue, and we was just going.
It's the best way to do chores.
It really
honestly.
is.
Any
Just
type
your
of chores.
person.
Put the earbuds in, you're set. So Lauren put together a Google sheet of a million podcasts, categorized them in like true crime, arson, catfishing, and all that fun stuff. So this one was from the Google Doc. It was called Sweet Bobby, which some
So
of you
good.
might have heard of because there is a Netflix documentary out about it. I highly recommend listening to the podcast first. So it came out October 27th in 2021. However, it started almost 10 years earlier, back in 2010. So it was a little bit of a lengthy progress in a storyline. So there are only 6 episodes, which was really nice because it's not this intense and really long one. And they're not really long. I think they were like 4, maybe some were only 30 minutes. So
It doesn't even matter because you're going to listen to it in a day.
it's just on.
Absolutely.
And it's nice though because again there aren't a million episodes. I give this a 10 out of 10. Again, I will not say anything to give it away, but it was just so insane when it came.
Spoiler-free review.
Yeah,
for
we're
everything.
really trying to be spoiler free here. So I really enjoyed it was an investigative journalist, a reporter, who was going about this story, interviewing the woman, and this was about a catfish. Catfish happening. Is that even a way to say this?
catfish
A catfish that
Catfishing
happened.
situation.
So for those of you who don't know what catfishing is, hopefully we do, but it's someone to basically pretending that they're someone and they're really not. So this woman was being catfished, and this guy's going back and forth, like kind of following her life. And I thought that it was just a really well done podcast because he would talk about his side of like, okay, these are the questions that I'm thinking, and why didn't she ask these questions, or when she was going through this, why didn't she do this? And at one point he's following it in real time, like stuff was still happening as he's releasing episodes, so that kind of kept you on your toes. It wasn't like he's telling a story from 50 years ago. The other thing that I really enjoyed is not that this was lighthearted at all, but it was a nice break from like, the real true crime, like crazy stories that you hear. So it was a little, I don't know, more lighthearted. It was a little not joyful at all.
some
but
humor.
Yeah,
like,
the way it was
humor,
said.
and the story is sad in its own
yes,
way.
yes.
However,
but also wild.
it's a
Absolutely
wild
insane.
ride, and I will say, without giving any spoilers, at least the end of it, like she's in a good place at the end of it, as in a good place as she can be. So it's not
Yeah.
like this. You're walking around going from, oh God, like,
Yes, yes.
You're more going, what?
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
that's super.
It's not too heavy
It's not
in its,
too
in its
heavy.
ending.
I think we can all agree that we hate podcasts that end on cliffhangers.
Oh God.
We want things solved and we
Something
want
that's not
things figured
closed.
out. So
Yeah.
this one I think had the nicest ending it could have. Could there have still been, things that
Totally.
were closed, or doors that were closed
Totally.
that we, wished and wanted? But yes, but overall I think it was, solved in the way we wanted it to. So highly recommend. It was very entertaining. I then watched the Netflix documentary, and I really felt that it was almost like a different story that they were talking about, because it just didn't have certain details about it. And I think it was, again, just Kirat, I believe I pronounced her name correct, is the name of the woman. and they're only really interviewing her and a couple other people.
It's one long episode.
Yeah, and it doesn't like there's not a lot of depth to it, and it's not saying her story isn't, but I think just the way it's portrayed in it. So definitely the podcast was something that
It just
was,
unfolded so well. Like
I think that's
built
why.
really well on the podcast. So yeah.
And I think because part of it was in real time, there was that moment of like, you're sitting on the edge of the seat, like what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And like, wait, this is only 2 years ago. Like, I think there's an element of that. We're listening to podcasts that are happening now are just absolutely crazy. Cause you're like, wait, this could have happened like in my town or,
You could look these people up on social media.
Yes. There's the element of that of like, oh, I can get to know this person now that maybe I couldn't if I was listening to something a little bit ago. So highly recommend. It's called Sweet Bobby.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if I'm talking to people who haven't listened to podcasts before and they're like interested in true crime, that is always that's my gateway.
Yes,
is like listen to Sweet Bobby. It'll get you hooked and then you'll just want more. So yeah, very good pick, I think, to start with. Okay, so I am talking about a book. It's called A Flicker in the Dark. And I just read this last week.
In 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was like, how long did it take you to finish that book, Lauren?
Okay, I am the reader. I do love it. And this was a book that so a couple other friends of mine and we do like a book exchange around Christmas time. And so we all make like Amazon wish lists of some books and we pick a name and, we get a person a book. So my like downfall sometimes with books is that I'll spend like so much time looking for a book and like reading through reviews and I'm like, oh, half the people love this, half the people hate it.
It's like going on Netflix and just
exactly.
It
like
is.
it's the
It's
book
the same
version
thing.
of that.
It's
And then
like
I'm like,
45
well,
minutes of
I
that.
just
Totally.
used all of my reading time trying to find a book to read. So it's kind of nice when someone just buys you a book and you're like, well,
you're like,
I
just
own
read
this
it.
now,
It's
so I'm
great.
going to read it.
Yeah.
Or like I love when a friend reads a book and recommends it. And
A good book isn't cheap.
no.
It's like an investment.
It is not. So yeah, I like when I can just like blindly go up to my bookshelf and pull one off that I
Love
haven't
that.
read and just like dive into it. Because then sometimes if I'm gifted a book, I sometimes won't even read the like back of it, so I don't know
That's
what
nice.
I'm.
You're
That's
really
fun.
just, it's like
for.
watching a movie.
Yeah.
just,
A movie without like seeing a trailer.
anything.
So whereas when I'm picking a book, I'm like reading everything I can about it to see if I should. So yeah, A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, who I had never heard of before. And that's why I kind of say I sort of like haphazardly came across it and I was like, whatever, I'll just add it to my Amazon list. And this is what my friend bought for me. And she is actually a fairly new author. I'm almost certain that, so this is her first ever book. And I think it came out in 2022. She's 33, so right around our age. And she has come out with several others, like at least one a year, I think, since then. So she's killing it.
It's doing it.
And it's, I tend to like if you like any other authors, like, Ruth Ware, Lisa Jewell, Gillian Flynn, like
Never
those
heard
types
of these people.
those types of authors. If you like any type of true crime podcast, this is the type of book you will like to read. Just psychological things, mysteries, murder, think detectives, things like that. And I loved it. I thought it was so good. I give it I'm gonna give it like a 9, which is like
Okay.
really, really high.
And this is her first book
this
she
is
wrote?
her first book, so I was
She got
like,
Lauren approved on the first one.
I was really, really
Good for her.
impressed. I thought that the pacing was great. Sometimes in books, you're like, okay, this is
let's
like
move
taking
on.
forever and it doesn't get interesting or good till like halfway through the book. But I felt like the pacing was really good. You were immediately like invested in the lives of these characters that you were reading about. The interest built really well. It has on the front a like, I don't know what it's called, a like review support from Karen Slaughter. And it says, a smart edge of your seat story with plot twists you'll never see coming. And anytime I read that in the front of the book, I'm like,
like,
oh, really?
All right.
We'll see about that. Like, it immediately puts me on like suspicion.
Yeah.
And anytime you're, if you read a lot of these types of books or listen to a lot of those types of podcasts or whatever,
Your radar is
your
up.
radar's
Yeah,
on.
sure.
Like, you are looking for, nothing is really as it seems. So you're looking for, who's really a bad guy, who's like, parading as a good guy. You just can't help it. Like, that's just how your brain starts to work. And so there are a lot of times where I'm like, this was a good book, but like I 100% knew that's how it was ending. Like, I definitely saw it coming. And so I was like telling my husband, like, okay, so it's one of these three things. I was like, it's either gonna be this, or this that's gonna be like the big plot twist at the end. And I was very pleasantly surprised that it was not just one of those. It was like all three of those plus something else.
Wow.
So that was very fun.
Yeah.
Because I was like getting towards the end of the book and I was like, oh, I think I'm going to be a little disappointed. Like, there's not going to be quite that like last good twist. Or sometimes there is and you're just like, that is so unfounded. Like, they did not do enough work in the book to like earn that plot twist.
Totally.
But yeah, she blended like several angles of plot twists together very seamlessly. So I felt very satisfied by the end of it. And, it wasn't this like perfect bow, like everyone has a happily ever after at the end, which also felt true. It didn't feel like, oh, we're just getting
This
this
is being
like
forced
everyone's
and-
happy
yeah.
in the end because you wouldn't be in these circumstances. So yeah, I thought it was really well done. I will 100% be looking to read more of her books, be adding her into my regular rotation, which hasn't happened, I feel like, in a long time. Like, I feel like every time I go to make a book list, I'm looking at the same couple of my authors being like, did they come out with a new book yet? Did they come out with a new book yet?
Okay.
So this has also encouraged me to like give it a shot every once in a
I feel like
while.
is it like the movies where you're like, okay, I've seen this, they're remaking this again. The same thing with
Yeah.
books. Do you feel like that? You have the same plots or the same
Yeah, I mean,
stories?
sometimes for sure. Like, I try not to read too many books by the same author in a row.
Okay.
Okay,
Because-
then you feel like you get
Yeah, every author kind of has like their thing, like
Yeah.
the either their voice or just like the way that they do things or the way that their mysteries unfold, and so it does take away a little bit.
Okay.
I think if you're reading 2 or 3 from the same author in a row, so I try to be fair and like mix it up a little bit, but sometimes you're just like, I want to know that it's going to be good, so you don't want to just pick a random author that you've never
you
read
want-
before.
In those cases, you want someone that you,
Especially now as a mom, like I just don't have as much time as I used to sit down
Totally.
and read. So I'm like, it's kind of like, same thing when Miles and I get to go out for dinner. It's like, as much as I want to try a new restaurant, I also
want
want to
good
guarantee a really good meal tonight because I don't have time to like be like, oh, this wasn't good, but next week it's like, okay, next year. So yeah, I don't like venture out and experiment as much, but I was really like, I didn't want to put this down. I was like, ooh, I need to get back to this.
That's pretty good.
And read it. So, yeah, it was. I don't really want to give too much away because I also once I started reading it, or towards the end, I went back and read the sleeve, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I would have like really wanted to read this so much because it sounded a little cliche. But it's about this girl, Chloe Davis, and when she's 12, her father goes to prison for murdering 6 girls in their town. And she grows up to be a psychologist helping other girls. And I was just kind of like, okay, grow up to be a psychologist. Like, I don't know if I really want to read that. And now so you're 20 years later from that crime. And so that crime connects to something that is now happening in her life 20 years later, taking her back to the past. I do find that also is really helpful in books to keep the pace and the momentum going. When you're jumping between like time frames, it makes things move so much faster. Whereas if you're just doing, like, I've read good books that were very linear, but I think in general it's very hard to like keep the momentum and interest going when you're just in like one timeline. And sometimes it's very confusing. Like sometimes I'm like, wait, I have to go back and reread that because I didn't realize we switched timelines or whatever. But in here, it's very clear and was easy to follow back and forth. So yeah, I wasn't expecting to have such high praise for this one, but
I'm definitely going to either, now that I know that it is not a waste of time. That's a huge factor for me.
Yeah.
Like I will listen to any book, but I will not sit down and try to read or take one on vacation unless I know for a fact that this is a good book. So I will take this one on my next vacation.
So
absolutely.
Yes. All right. So podcast, book.
Moving on to
Joy's whole life has been leading up to this.
Okay. The nails.
I love movies. I just love them. It's a thing that my husband and I definitely share. We actually said we were leaving ShopRite, and he looked at me and he said, "Can you imagine if one of us didn't like movies?" And I said, "We wouldn't be married, most likely." So really, really love also shows as well, but really into movies. And I feel like each of us took a genre that we really like. So maybe in future Couch Critics will maybe
venture to
into other areas where we're not used to. But this is also my area. This is labeled as a comedic horror film.
Oh,
but
I immediately think
it
of
is
Hot
not.
Fuzz for
But
some reason.
it is. I will say, horror is definitely extreme. I do not think that it really should be horror. The movie that I am reviewing today is The Menu. And okay. So this is with Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Fiennes. Okay. So this movie came out a couple years ago, but it totally flew under the radar. Have you even heard of this movie?
No, I know. Wait, is she the one from Queen's Gambit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Anya Taylor-Joy. She's from Queen's Gambit. My first time ever seeing her was in Split. I think that may have been her first movie. With James McAvoy. Incredible performance. She's a great actress. Ralph Fiennes obviously is, he's an icon. So you're gonna get an amazing performance from this. But this movie completely flew under the radar for me when it first came out. I don't even know if it was actually in the movie theaters. Maybe
I don't remember hearing about
it. It might
this.
not have been. It might have been just an HBO thing. I don't remember. But one night, I think I'm wrapping Christmas gifts maybe, or I don't remember where I was. Again, this was last year, I think, when I first saw it. And my husband just starts playing it in the background. I'm like, first of all, I'm offended that you started a movie without me, but also I don't even know what this is, so whatever. So the movie kicks off, and again, I've never seen a trailer, so I don't know what anything is. I'm just watching it kind of from a distance as well. And I see this couple. That's who we're kind of following. We're following this man, Tyler, and his date, who Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Margot. So we're following Tyler and Margot, and they are on this kind of going onto a ferry, looking like going to this private island where there's this restaurant there called Hawthorne, and it is this very exclusive, very high-end. Nobody could get a seat at this type of restaurant. It
sounds like a really great, recipe for disaster right now.
So again, going into this not knowing anything about like the horror aspect of it, I'm like, okay, whatever. So, and they get onto the ferry and it starts already, like the food starts. So they bring them this like appetizer, and
does it feel like ominous from the beginning, or are you like, this could be like a romance or something?
It's actually satire. So it feels like Chef's Table if you're familiar with it on Netflix.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So actually what it goes to, it has Tyler, and then he takes a bite of this. What does he have? I think it's an oyster he has, but it's got a bunch of foam on it and all these crazy things that you would see on Chef's Table. And then the camera like goes off, and then you just see it on a table by itself, like slowly turning, and then what is on this comes up, just like Chef's Table. Okay. So it's very cool. It's very foodie. So if you like that world of like fine dining and cuisine, but you also are really into psychological crap, this is the movie for you. So we're seemingly like nothing is a mess. So now you start to see more characters come in, and there's a good amount of characters. So I do have them, I think, all here listed that I'll run through real quick. But again, you're being introduced to them all. I will say though, the way you find out that it's satire is everyone is kind of a caricature of themselves. So Tyler is the foodie, but like way too much, like taking like angles of everything and being, so he's a caricature of a foodie, right? Then you have the rich couple who have been to this restaurant, I think 11 times. Okay.
Cannot
and like,
get in
an
there.
older rich couple who clearly have fallen out of love with each other, and this is just going with the flow, right? Then you have the investor bros who are the finance guys, and I just cheated on my girl, whatever, like very, again, characters of these characters who have so much money they can go here, but whatever, I mean, like, I guess it's okay, but my personal chef is like just as good, just like that type of thing. And then you have I think he does have a name, but in the credits, which is definitely purposeful, he's just labeled the movie star. He doesn't even have a name. So it's the washed up movie star who is actually played by John Leguizamo, who plays Sid in Ice Age. So super
crazy.
funny character. It is a funny movie, but it's dark. So it's funny and dark together. Those two things kind of like, you're like, how could that go together?
Does it balance it out for you then, so you don't feel so overwhelmed by like, what am I watching?
And the fact that it is very outlandish, it takes you out purposely. The point of the movie is to show the irony between like the food that we're eating and how much the joy of food is supposed to bring you joy. Right? It's supposed to be enjoyed by family and friends around times of coming together, holidays, what have you. And it shows how the culture that we live in right now about like making everything photogenic and how it's taken that element out of it. So now we are introduced to, after we get on the island and the maitre d' shows us a tour of, where everything is grown and where all of the chefs sleep with each other, like in barracks.
Oh, wow.
And then, so we were going through the whole island and we're taking a tour, and then we have our first course at the restaurant, and we're introduced to the main character, the chef, that Ralph Fiennes plays. And he's just so incredible, because he's clearly, obviously, you're going to know from the first scene that this is the bad guy. This is the villain.
Yeah.
But he's so calm and gentle that you don't like see it, really. Like you see it because it's there, but you're taken aback. You don't know what to think about it because he's playing it so coolly, and you almost feel bad for him a little bit. So he has kind of a personal vendetta to play. He has a personal vendetta against every single person here. Okay. So he has specifically invited everyone here.
Got it.
For this moment.
Wow.
Okay. Now, without giving it all away, this is the only part I will say. So Tyler, the foodie, who the main kind of guy and that we're following with Margot, we realize that his date that was supposed to go with him just broke up with him. His girlfriend broke up with him last minute.
So Margot's
he
in
found
for a real
a date
exciting time.
to take with him. And the second that the chef sees her, he's like, she's not supposed to be here, because he knows which is also super interesting too, because that is an element of fine dining that's real. These restaurants research you. They want to know about you. They want to know your likes, your dislikes, your allergies, obviously. They want to know if you're visiting from another country so that they can take painstakingly care of you. So that element is true. He researched all these people, but he does it in a sinister way, obviously, to get what he needs. Okay. So without giving anything away, obviously, this movie was so controversial with me and my husband and I, because he hated it. He
really
at the end of it, he was, and I think he doesn't like satire that much. And this is clearly, again, over the top,
right,
in so many ways. And I love just the finding the funny in this crazy situation right now. So I watched it like in the past year, probably 2 or 3 times.
Oh my God.
I love it. And then I do deep dives on like YouTube. Like I watch like the whole like meaning behind it, like look for things that I may have missed. Loved it so much. I would give, and it ends, I would say, in a way that is satisfying.
Okay.
But again, you're just like, what just happened? It's bizarre. So, but I would probably give this movie, an 8.5. I love this movie. Incredible performances. And it's so hard to find a movie right now that's like original and unique.
Yeah.
And that's like doesn't feel like it's being taken and from other plot
Yeah,
points
yeah, yeah.
and other 100 other stories that you've seen. I thought it was super original. So yeah, I would say if you haven't seen it, go home and watch it right now.
I feel like so. I sort of saw it,
oh no,
but didn't get the like full effect of
Okay,
it. So
okay,
I know
okay.
the plot
So you know what happens.
and I know what happens.
Okay.
But okay, so we have very different tastes
Very.
in movies because you are a movie lover. So I feel like your taste is very broad. Like you can appreciate a lot of different
Totally.
types of movies.
I almost talked about a cartoon. So yeah.
My scope is much more limited as far as movies that I like and I'm willing to watch, and I almost never rewatch movies ever. So my husband, on the other hand, is more like you, where he will watch almost anything. However, he has this really obnoxious habit of, especially if I don't want to watch a movie with him, or if he just gets like this list of movies that he wants to get through.
Yep.
He'll put one on and fast forward through the whole movie.
Brutal. Brutal.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't
So
know.
he'll watch like 5 to 10 minute chunks and then fast forward through a bunch and then another chunk and fast forward through a bunch and another chunk. So he might watch like a 2-hour movie in like 30 minutes.
But you like miss all of the.
I know.
Brutal.
And I'm like, I can't,
Yeah.
I like can't stand that.
Yeah. No.
Like if we're going to watch it, we're going to just
Watch the
we're going
whole
to commit
movie.
to it
Say
and watch
this
it.
is not the movie to do that.
Yeah.
You'll
so
miss
that
too much.
so
Because
I
it builds.
Yeah.
It builds and builds, which each course the stakes get higher and higher. So you need that pacing.
Okay.
You need
Yeah.
that perfect balance of what just happened and what's coming next.
Yeah. So I know, like I saw bits of it because I was in the room when he was fast forwarding through all of it, but I didn't get the full experience of that build in watching it. So I don't know if I would have liked that satire horror. Like I tend to have a hard time with those like very conflicting like feelings in a movie. I'm like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel when I'm watching.
Sure.
You
So
know,
I wrote down a couple other movies that if you like these movies, you will
Okay,
like.
okay,
you
great.
will like. You will also like this movie, so you'll know if this is for you or if this is not for you. So have you ever watched Game Night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very similar to
Oh
that.
yeah,
where
Steve
it's like,
Carell and Tina Fey.
no.
Who's
that one?
That's another one.
Oh, it's date night. Sorry,
Date night.
Date
no,
night.
Game Night is with the guy from Ozark, so I'm not remembering his name.
Jane
And Rachel McAdams.
Oh,
Jason-
no.
Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman. Yeah.
So again, funny but like ominous. So
Yeah.
that have you seen Ready or Not before?
Ready or Not? Who's that with? Do you remember?
All I know is that she's a Margot Robbie lookalike.
Ready or Not? It sounds familiar.
No.
Very similar to that. Also, if you like Knives Out, which I know you
I
like.
do love.
Knives Out.
I
Knives
do
Out,
love.
There's
That's
because
very
there's a
much like
mystery
that.
element to it. Glass Onion. I would say it's in the same world as that. So yeah,
I feel like this one, yours is like slightly darker.
it's darker because it's it's labeled as horror, not as a thriller. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little bit darker.
I don't know if I've seen Ready or Not. Oh my God. Okay, so this is another one where
Another one.
same thing.
Okay.
Another fast forward. Like I know,
another fast
but
forward.
I don't.
don't
don't know the full effect of. So if there's anything that you want us to review, drop a comment and we will take a look. And
Yes.
don't forget to enjoy the view wherever your ride takes you.